You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, Episode 16, Time in Games. Today we talk about managing time in your games. We discuss how to adjust your time flow to change atmosphere in your games. We also discuss how to merge mismatched time flows in games and how to handle downtime. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you like the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, or tell a friend. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name's Aaron, and across from me, in his house, in quarantine, is my good friend. He is the master of time, Jared.
A Time Lord.
A Time Lord, okay.
Doctor Who reference right there. Come on.
The last of the Time Lords.
Last of the... I'm a Gallifreyan.
I can't tell you the number of times I've been over and a Dalek has popped through the out of the fucking bathroom, and Jared had to go fight. I mean, it's bad.
It's ridiculous. The Daleks in the bathroom is just becoming an issue because
it's Zap Johnny. Okay, we lost Johnny.
We did lose Johnny. He was a good man. Good man.
Poor Johnny.
Strong back.
Moment of silence for Johnny.
Moment of silence.
All right, that's it.
Moment of silence. So, today's topic is, Aaron?
We're going to be talking about time in games. Okay,
time in games.
Kind of the flow of time, how you manage time, how you kind of put your players into that movement through time. Because obviously you can't do everything in real time. You only game for 3 to 7 hours, I guess, depending on the group. I mean, I guess some people do it for longer, right?
Very rarely. I have heard of we gamed for 12 hours straight and drank nothing but Mountain Dew. I don't recommend that because that's not very healthy. A good amount of sleep. Oh God, I'm getting old. Oh God, that's just sad.
Oh,
when people tell me I did a 12-hour gaming session instead of being like, oh man, I wish I was there, I was like, you should have gotten a proper amount of sleep, young man. Did you have a good breakfast? Was it heavy in caloric intake? I'm so old now. So no, I mean, I've heard of the 12-hour or the 24-hour. I've heard of the attempt to go for real time in game. Generally, that's only producible in a LARP setting with baffle weapons or whatever they're called, the styrofoam weapons. That's producible almost in real time. For a role-playing experience beyond that, you're really going to have a very tough time doing real time. And I would not recommend to any of our storytellers attempting to chase that dragon. It's just like heroin. It gives you a little taste and you're like, I can do this. And to my listeners, I have spent over 20 years looking at very particular topics in games and saying I can crack that code. For example, my personal favorite, one of my best successes was the prison game. Someone said that you can't run a game that's entirely based in a prison. And I cracked that code, came up with a brilliant idea. It was excellently enabled. The game didn't last too long because, unfortunately, I was running it with brother and one of his friends, and they were older and, had things to do when I was younger and did not have things to do. But no, it's doable. This one, though, is a dragon that I wouldn't recommend chasing. It's not going to bring a whole lot to your players. It's not going to bring any special events. No one is going to go to another table and be like, hey, man, he did a game in real time. And that storyteller is going to just bang his head up against the wall trying to chase it. So I wouldn't recommend it. But back more to the topic at hand. Time is, as Aaron put it, we were talking before, it is more of a feeling rather than a science. And that is the best way to put it.
Exactly. You have to really feel out when time needs to accelerate versus decelerate. Because a round of your players at the table, depending on the system you play for, is anywhere between 4 to 10 seconds. And so clearly if you are running a round of combat, it's very easy to tell time. You just count the number of rounds. Okay. But at the end of that combat, combats take forever to run in real time. They take hours sometimes to run a combat in real time. And when you come to the end of that, it's like, oh, by the way, you've been in combat for 2 minutes.
Yeah. Like 911 just got the call. Like, what? We've been doing this all night. Yeah, 911 just got that call. Yeah, it's a very much a feeling of the room. Do you need to increase the speed of time in game to move things along? For example, my personal favorite is when discussing game time is downtime.
Exactly. Yes.
How do you progress downtime? I mean, there are some storytellers who will chase the dragon of we're going to play out downtime. Oh my God!
Do not play out
No.
downtime. Do not. No. There comes a point when you realize that your players don't know what to do with the time, that you go, and we're on to the next day. Or do you guys sleep for the rest of the night? Or it's getting to be around 12 o'clock. I mean, right now we're doing our detective game or investigation type games here. And we've kind of gotten the feel down in terms of like, what time is it when you start versus what time is it when you're done with a scene? Meaning, like, if I have a conversation with an NPC, that's not real time. Okay.
No.
We could say that is real time, but we inherently say there is a ramp up period behind it. And again, this is why it's more of a feeling than a science, because obviously you look at it and you go, okay, well, I'm going to start timing this conversation. Well, the conversation lasted for 30 minutes. But there might have been moments in that conversation when the players talked amongst themselves outside of game to discuss something. So what is happening in game is kind of that feeling of how do you make time flow and let that conversation progress, like if you're going to allow that table talk, to maybe say this is how long it took in actuality. Because your questions can't always be so pointed if you're trying to interrogate someone or get information, that it's like, where's the princess? Where are the drugs? Like, you can't be saying that.
Where are the drugs?
Because nobody in a real world is going to have that conversation with you. People are going to have, bullshit between your conversations. And so what you got to try to do is feel out, how do you pad the time that somebody talked to someone in game?
And really that's a key point, especially with the out of game talk. I always encourage, okay, I'll admit this is technically a metagaming, but we call it a consigliere moment. If any of you wonder what a consigliere is, look up Mafia Advisor, all right? Because we've essentially a house rule that says that if you're asking for a consigliere moment, you're asking for a time to talk with the other players or with the GM even. Like, I value and cherish those moments, mainly because you, one, hear what all the players think is going on, so you can know which way to point them or which way not to point them. But it's just extraordinary, the things that you learn, and I fully advise you guys to take advantage of that. So yes, you do. It does disrupt the time flow, though. So essentially, a lot of time is that feeling like, that conversation probably took you about an hour, maybe two, because you had dinner, wine was served, or the protein shake of 2020 that fills you up, or 2320 that fills you up, whatever. There had to been, there was time waiting for those things. Nobody talks while they're freaking serving you. You're smelling the food and you're taking your first couple of bites.
Just imagine if somebody like called you to like a dinner and you sat down for 2 minutes, they asked you 2 questions and they're like, this is pointless. And they're like, be gone with you. Like, that doesn't actually happen.
like we just sat down. Don't even get an appetizer? Like, we didn't even order the appetizers. I don't recommend trying to chase the real-time experience of like, what are the menu selections? Don't do that.
Listen to our podcast on don'ts, because that is superfluous detail. Don't do that.
I love that word, superfluous. So time is just, you really need the consent of the governed. Again, I love using that term. Consent of the governed is when you come out of time. Now, as a storyteller, I strongly recommend that it was around 1 to 2 hours. I'm going to guide my players towards that. But if all my players are like, Jared, that was like 30 freaking minutes. Like, we sat down, we grabbed a coffee, we asked them 2 questions and walked the hell out. Like, yeah, okay, all right, fine, guys, you're right, I'm wrong. And it's okay to be wrong as a storyteller. That's all right. That makes you human.
This is the one place that I would say let your players lobby against your time, and
yes.
let their judgment of how long maybe something might have taken take hold. So I mean, obviously the GM has the final word at the table, but if your players are like, really, did that take 2 hours? You might be like, you're like that felt more like 30 minutes to me, and you're like, good point. That's an easy retcon, something that doesn't break the immersion, and it's very. And
it also gives your players a sense of agency when it comes to the players being involved. It's like, okay, like I do have some control in the game besides my sheet, my dice, and my actions. I have a little control over the world. I can barter and talk with my storyteller, and then we can create a community. So when always kind of tell them when a scene is done. When a scene is done, there needs to be established how long that took. That's generally one of the things that I do after combats, after discussions, essentially after a scene, a night at the tavern, a fight in the city hall. All these things always end with what time, how long that took, because that will, and you have to be accurate with it, and get the consent of the governed still, because here's the thing. They get in the fight in the city hall. Right? Let's take this to a medieval setting. You get in the fight in the city hall, it's going to take the guard who was outside the front door, who heard all the action, it's going to take him 3 minutes to run to the barracks and rally the rest of the town's guards. That's going to take him 5 minutes to gear up. After 5 minutes, it's going to take them 3 minutes to run back to City Hall with the rest of the guards, and that's when they're going to bust in. This gives your players a whopping 11. Math isn't my strong suit. Aaron's judging me hard, and I feel it through the camera. We need Brian, the human calculator. I know we only for our listeners, Brian is a human calculator. You can give him like any 2 numbers and you multiply them in his head. And the cool thing is, though, is we generally use him for general addition and subtraction, which is a sure waste of his talent. But
yes,
that's how we use him.
It's a great party trick.
It is a great party trick. Brian, 2,043 times 9,056. He'll give you the answer within 3 seconds. It's crazy. It's nuts. His mind for numbers is just incredible. So it gives your players 11 minutes to sack that city hall, to look for the trap door that will lead them down to the dungeon where the princess is being held. It'll give them 11 minutes to ransack all of his files and run out. It'll give them 8 minutes to start a fire if they want to. It gives your players the choice and the opportunity to act. There's so many storytellers that want to say, bam, you took out the first wave of guards, now enter the second wave of guards because I want this combat to keep going. There's time. And give your players that time and be realistic in time. My thing is I research crap to death, to the very death. One of my new things has been watching YouTube videos of people who are medieval armorists. Even though I don't generally perform games in the medieval period, it has struck a chord with me recently. I don't know why. But Jesus, it takes 45 minutes to put on knight's armor. There's 7 layers. So don't rob your players of that time because they want that action or you want that action. Because don't forget, even if you've got a barbarian in that group whose one sole job is to bash things, he just got to bash things. Let your rogue, steal the precious gem. Let your wizard go through the old textbooks for 8 minutes. Give them that time. Because then they get to let their light shine. They get to let their actions and their capabilities really take center stage. Don't just keep feeding the barbarian. Don't just keep feeding anyone. Don't just keep feeding the wizard. Play to everyone in that crowd. because trust me, what you get back will just be fantastic.
Exactly. And that's kind of where it comes into that feeling mentality where you're trying to put tension on it. So like everyone knows that they're short on time. So let's say you have a combat, okay? And like Jared said, the city guard is alerted and they're going to be coming. You've got 11 minutes from the start of that combat to when the city guard comes with backup. Okay. Well, if your players breeze through that combat, it's very tense if they only have 10 minutes because you have to thumb through a book, like you said. So you can make that tension feel really, really long. You can make those 10 minutes or those 8 minutes, however long they had left, feel really long. Also, if your combat is woefully short, you can extend the combat in a sense, meaning you don't have to follow the hard rules that are like 4 seconds around, 10 seconds around, however many seconds it is. You can be like, well, as you describe the combat can feel like it took longer. Because the worst thing in the world that you don't want to end up happening is your combat, you spend 3 hours doing a massive combat, the players finish it off, okay, you calculate how long that took, it took a minute and 30 seconds, okay, well, nobody's like the response to that is never going to be as great because now you've got all this time to get away. Somebody probably hasn't even placed to call the 911 at this point. Or, the city guard just realized crap went down. So, I mean, you can extend that combat because it was a lengthy process. You can add time to it. You can pad time on the end of it and make the tension.
Especially if you've got that one player who loves going through dead people's pockets. One of the games that I ran, everyone was playing Jedi. Again, it was with my brother and one of his friends, and he said one of his friend was like, "We ain't the March of Dimes." He was a Jedi who took everything out of everybody's pockets after they were dead. He was like a grave robber. It was horrible, but hilarious at the same time. So if they like to, scavenge the dead bodies, that takes time. That's a way to extend a little bit. You know what I mean? After modern combats, it's always great to be like, does anyone want to check each other for bullet holes? Because one bullet can. This is one of the things that I've missed in the modern very much is the lethality. I have not been engaging with it a lot lately. How lethal a single round is. One round in your side. I mean, you could potentially, I mean, depending on the caliber of the weapon, the exit wound could be the size of a grapefruit. If you got like something like a 30-06, you got a pretty big exit, and people are not doing great. Everyone checks for bullet holes. Everyone's got to drop empties and reload fulls. In space combat, check for blaster holes. Everyone's got to recharge their E-packs and switch out E-packs, and I don't know, they ain't the March of Dimes, so loot bodies.
Are you hiding evidence?
Are you hiding evidence? Are you dragging bodies out of the street? So are you grabbing the one guy that you needed to interrogate and throwing him in the back of the car? That doesn't take 2 seconds. As someone who worked in a school that required physical management, I have restrained quite a few people, and it's not easy. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work, and it's not short. And always be creative if you're going to extend that time. Maybe the guy that they were gonna grab runs. He heard all the gunshots going, and he's just gonna run for it, and have your warrior go chase after him while your rogue goes through all the pockets, like your wizard opens up the trunk and finds all the books that he wanted to read. Engage them all. So the other thing that I did want to talk about with time is we talked about action turns, and that does 3 minutes, 4 minutes, blah blah blah. The next thing I want to talk about is prolonged actions. So for example, as Aaron and I have mostly experienced, White Wolf, rituals is a huge part of it. Magic, creating magic. For you space dwellers out there, you might have prolonged rolls when it comes to repairing a warp engine. replacing a hyperdrive nacelle, whatever it has to be. Prolonged rolls are great, and they're great for your very specified groups, because a lot of the times the wizard doesn't get to engage in the combat very much. Why? Because he's a very low HP. He mostly stands out on the periphery and he engages with his lightning bolts, and that's all he does. Unless you're detecting that your player is very engaged by that, if he is, God bless, go on. If he's not, if you're detecting that sense of like, man, he's just, all he does is sit on that edge, and you feel like maybe I'm losing him a little bit. By all means, incorporate prolonged rolls into your games. Incorporate the ritual that takes 7 hours to complete. Incorporate the engine that takes 24 hours to fix, and require rolls for each determined amount of time. Now, how do I determine how long it takes to replace a warp drive nacelle? Okay, this is where you dive deep into your magical pocket of BS.
Yes.
Okay? Some of you will be tempted, very tempted, to go to your Enterprise D technical manual, which, yes, is a book I owned. I'm not sure where it is now, but I owned it. All right? I'm a Trekkie, not a Star Wars guy. That's why I'm sorry, Star Wars people. I do terrible. I like Star Wars, don't get me wrong, but I was a Trekkie. Still am. Picard, great show. Okay, back to the point. So the nacelle. Do not go running to your Enterprise E technical guide and look it up and be like, okay, so they need to replace the warp plasma coils and blah 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 blah. What you're doing is you're filling it up with too much technical. You need to keep your players engaged. You need to keep time moving. You need to keep everything moving forward. But also, you have to make your specialist at the same time. It's a very delicate balance, because your specialist has to feel like he's actually doing something. So when the specialist gets that thing, you hand him the Enterprise E technical manual, and he starts, or D, and he opens it up, and he doesn't know what he's doing. You might lose some of that. You might gain some of that. He might think, oh my God, I got to replace a warp coil. And you're like, absolutely, yes. That will take 5 hours. Do not attempt to extract very realistic times to prolonged rolls, especially with things that you don't know.
Again, take it back to the beginning. Don't chase that dragon. Don't
chase that dragon. Don't play real time. Don't. And unless you got, now I would tell you very much, if you have an expert in the room, rely on their knowledge. I am not a car guy. If I said I need to drop an engine, or we need to fix the brake or the wheel, my buddy Anthony, our buddy Anthony, could tell you how long it will take down to the second. Why? Because he's probably fixed about 50 billion of them. Really, he makes superconductors. That's what he does. Really. If you asked how long does it take to program something, Aaron is a great resource. If you needed to know, I don't know, how long it takes to run a social studies class, I don't.
Jared's a great resource.
I'm a great resource for that. But I rely on your experts if they're in the room to determine time, because no one. If you got the player who's going to go up against the expert, and like, the roll, it says right here, it takes 3 minutes per roll. You got the expert over there that's saying, trust me, dropping an engine, 60 minutes, period. How many mechanics you got? Oh, you got 3 mechanics? Yeah, 60 minutes. You got, as the storyteller, negotiate between your expert, between your rules lawyer, and yourself, and be like, guys, I understand that it says 10 minutes, but Anthony over there says it's 60, and you know what? I'm inclined to believe Anthony because he fixed my brakes last week. So I don't know what the GURPS writer of systems does for a living. I don't know what he does, but I'm sure he ain't dropping engines.
They wrote a rule for it, but he's probably not dropping engines.
So rely on your experts. If that doesn't work, go into your big bag of BS and be like, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 70 minutes. If you're going to do that, try to keep track. And here's what I do. With prolonged rolls, I evenly distribute it out amongst the amount of rolls that I want. Now, Question, Jared, how many rolls should I make a prolonged roll? There are some rules in White Wolf. There's one spell that I know can like take up to 25 rolls to achieve. There are some that can take over 100 rolls to achieve. You have lost your player in 20 minutes. Your player doesn't even care anymore after 20 minutes, okay? Unless you've got a player like this is what this guy loves, this gal loves. They love rolling those dice and just accumulating successes, and they love making tally marks. Okay, then go on with your bad self on the 100 rolls that it will take. They're lost in their own fun land. If, however, you are dealing with any rational person, you've lost them in 20 minutes. If you know going around your table one time takes about 4 minutes, I'd recommend 5 rolls. 5 rolls. Even if it is over the course of a night, that's okay. Nighttime is 16 hours. We're going to make it 3 hours per roll. Done. What is your character doing? Now, here's the other time equation. While your character is in his prolonged roll, he's fixing the warp nacelle. He's replacing the hyper drive. He's reconfiguring his 6-shooter, because I don't want to forget the Western fans that we have out there. Because I'm right out there with you. I just do the modern Westerns. Hell or High Water. Great movie. Great movie. I will entice you to remind that player who's making the prolonged roll, I'm going to focus on you. This is your time to shine. Be there in the moment with them, because prolonged rolls, it can even wear you out as a storyteller. You can be like, oh my God, we're on roll 50. Make it.
Yeah, you're hating your life at that point. You're just like, how many have we done? And like, where did we go? Like, again, if you like making tally marks, then
if you do,
have at you. Have the best damn time rolling dice and making tally marks. But
God bless you.
But if not, I mean, like Jared said, just pick an arbitrary number and make it reasonable, something that you can work through, something that you can make feel intense over the course of time. Okay? Something that you can make feel satisfying over the course of time. Because as you build things up, especially if you have somebody repairing your warp drive in Jared's example, okay, if you have somebody repairing your warp drive, you want to make them feel like every roll matters in some way, shape, or form. So you don't want it to be 100 meaningless rolls and somewhere along the way they succeed. You want it to be, you spent 5 hours doing this, you gave me 5 good rolls, and every roll mattered, because every time that you failed, or like critical failure, or you botched or whatever, like things went backwards, and now you have to spend more time building that warp engine, okay, or repairing that warp engine, or
Aaron, we're repairing a warp nacelle, okay?
Sorry.
Just the nacelle.
Okay, forgive me. Okay, I'm not as literate with the sci-fi stuff as Jared is. So, but you don't want somebody to feel like they're just, like Jared said, rolling dice, unless that's just their bee's knees for them, and
if that's the bee's knees for them, knock them, let them roll, let the good times roll. But in that, make sure that you don't get tired out, and make sure every roll counts. Be descriptive. Tell them what broke. Oh man, as you went to go drop the plasma conduit, the plasma conduit bent. Oh man, your team had to go back and they had to fish out a new one. Roll me a search roll to see if you can find the appropriate something or other. Make every count or every round meaningful. Now, what do I do with the rest of my players while that time is going on? That time is his time. The rest of y'all, because the rest of you picked command staff, okay, have to deal with the Romulan bird of prey. Have something else going on. It is particularly a good storyteller if you want to level up your gaming. If you want to level up your storytelling. I don't even know what the Star Trek role-playing game calls a storyteller. Oh well, either way.
Well, you'll find out by the next one, or maybe the one after that. I don't know.
Sure. So if you can make it actually somehow connected and tied to your player who's making those prolonged rolls, all the better. All the better. If they need to escape this Romulan bird of prey, they need to bolt, but that nacelle is still under repair. Let your command staff fight it out with the bird of prey while your engineering guy is trying to fix the dang engine. Watch that connection. Let everyone feel the intensity. And trust me, it's hard to manage, but it is worth it.
It's really hard to manage because one of the other things you got to do there, and this is actually going to be kind of my final point that I was going to bring up, is, and Jared just spoke to it there. You've got one player who's rolling 5 specific rolls to fix your warp nacelle, okay? And then you've got the other players fighting the bird of prey, okay? Well, the players fighting the bird of prey will be rolling a lot more and be more engaged because the person fixing the warp nacelle is doing the warp nacelle thing. However, what you can do to kind of split to manage their time and make sure that they're all kind of flowing in the same order is that if these players fail to dodge the photon blasts, then
they use disruptor technology.
Okay, my bad. The disruptor technology. Okay, then this player here has to make a roll to save his work this hour because he doesn't want to lose the warp nacelle work. Okay, and then hey, maybe you decide that you gotta bolt fast. You gotta cut some corners, do some quick stuff. This guy says, let's speed this up. What do I need to do? And the GM says, you got to do this. And now this guy's moving on because again, what you do, the hardest thing to have here, and this happens specifically when you start splitting parties versus grouping up parties and having them move in their own time fields here, is that you're going to have players who do stuff that is very simple to do and the scene is not very complex, and then they have to wait a very long time for a longer, more developed scene to happen to catch them up. So it's very important to try to find a way to continue to engage the other player, even if that is simply having him roll the attack dice during the encounter.
Yeah, definitely. That was a solid point. I loved how you had temporal fields in there. That was very Star Trek-ish. So prolonged dice, it's a very complex, especially when you've got those two groups, but it's highly rewarding when you've actually created a moment where your engineer was the star of the show because he got to fix the warp nacelle while at the same time your command staff was the star of the show. It's very difficult, but when you pull it off, it's magical. The last thing I wanted to talk about was downtime. Did we already talk about that?
Yeah, we did talk about downtime.
You talked about downtime? Oh, dang. Well, downtime, especially what I want to discuss, is over weeks, months, healing times. My recommendation, hit the fast forward button. Just hit that sucker. Nobody cares that if somebody has a particular thing they want to do over a month period of time, like for example, one time I played a super powered businessman who had super intelligence, and like it was based on finance, like some of it was based on finance. I want to grow my business. Cool, give me a roll. We're not going to go into how you did it. Just give me the goddamn roll. I will tell you how much money that your Uber company needed. Our friend Ken handled that very well, I felt, because essentially he was just like, Jared, how many times? It's over the length of 3 months. So give me 1 roll per month to increase your business. And he threw out unsettling numbers of money, which was what I wanted. He kept me engaged. Why one of our players was regenerating. And Jared walked out with a big smile on his face. Did it change our game at all to give me more Uber money than I already had on top of my Uber money? No. Game didn't change. My character was already Bruce Wayne. And so with downtime, don't go into details. Hit that fast forward button. Even with sleeping, unless you're in a D&D campaign where it's sleeping out in the wilderness is a scary thing because of bears. But
yeah. Unless you're gonna run a scene, just skip the sleep.
Just skip the sleep. You can prep them up. Be like, is somebody watching guard? Yeah, we'll take rotations. Okay, nothing happens. See how anticlimactic that was? Everyone's, you can be like, all right, guys, someone set up guard. Yep, excellent, cool. So the guard is managed throughout the night. Nothing really occurs throughout the evening, but you guys did have good security posture. Congratulate them on that. Don't just throw it in the trash. because next time they could be in, I don't know, bat country.
Your goal is to lure them into a false sense of security.
Security.
So that way, when they all decide to go to sleep the next time, that's when you pounce.
That's when it becomes bat country. Dang, bat country. So highly recommended. Time is a fun thing to play with. It can really make or break a game, especially with how you handle it. But here's my thing in the end, and I'm always going to recommend this to storytellers: slow down, take a breath. It's okay, especially when you're dealing with time. Just slow it down for a second. Okay, guys, let me figure this out for a second. There's nothing wrong with telling people to go get another glass of water or to go use the bathroom while you figure something out.
Yes.
Nothing wrong. Okay, especially with your first time. Like my time, I got a bag of BS times. That's how long I've been doing this. Just like 20 minutes. You need more minutes here? There are more minutes. I'm just throwing minutes at people. I don't know why.
You get minutes and you get minutes.
Get minutes. But in your first venture, it's okay. You're building up your bag, and sooner or later you'll be like, a medieval battle takes approximately 3.3 hours. How'd you get that? My bag of BS. That's how I got that. Or maybe you watched a YouTube video like I did.
But you got anything else that you want to add to this, Jared?
No, this has been a great conversation. I hope our listeners enjoyed it. Time, it's a fun place.
It is. We hope that everyone's doing all right out there in this crazy world. Hopefully things will get back to normal before too long. But if you'd like to engage with the podcast, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com, or subscribe, review, tell a friend. But for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a good week, guys.
Have a good week, everyone.